to Clinical Conversations, where we explore all things clinical and non-clinical when it comes to behavioral health in Los Angeles. I am your host, Jennique Mason, owner-operator of Phoenix Transformative. We are holistic concierge care management for women and girls ages 13 and up, navigating complex behavioral health and life transitions. Each episode, I sit down with clinicians, treatment professionals, and leaders in the field to talk about what's really happening in behavioral health, from treatment trends and clinical insights to the realities of helping families navigate recovery. And today's guest is Elisa Saunders, Director of Business Development. Elisa, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So a little birdie told me that a few days ago you were on Soft White Underbelly.
Yes, I was.
I'd love to hear about that.
Oh, it was such a great experience. Of course, I was extremely nervous.
Yes.
And I went very early. They were having lunch. They asked me to come back, and I went back early again. But Mark answered the door, and he was very gracious, very, very nice man.
Aww.
And the whole team was super nice. And yeah, I just loved it. And of course, I was thinking that I was going to have to get really deep into my recovery story, but he just put my mind at ease and basically asked me what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I mean, I know it wasn't a meeting of recovery, but I just felt comfortable and really just shared my story so I could be helpful to somebody watching, hopefully. That's the hope, right?
Of course you're going to be. I can't wait to see it. I mean, I love his content. I love that channel. I love Soft White Underbelly. I think that he gives a really valuable insight, to aspects of society that we just don't have any way of knowing about. And focusing also on the recovery aspect, which is amazing.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, Jennique. I didn't realize this, and I don't know exactly the details, but I watched afterward that he had found his girlfriend passed away that he had dated for a couple years. And I do believe it was to this disease, which really touched my heart, because I know that this platform definitely gets a little rugged, but I do think that he really has a heart for this platform and does it to help people.
No, for sure. And a lot of his content, a lot of the episodes, he's asking the harder hitting questions about kind of framing, like what could it look like, if you explored recovery,
right?
Which is very thought provoking, especially for people who, where they're at that moment in time, might not even see that as an option, right?
And I even said to him, I go, I know, Mark, because he had asked, like, what happens with me when I see somebody actually recover? I said, I know you've seen both sides of it, because there is such an ugly side of it. And I said, the two things is it hurts when I see somebody that can't get it, like he sees. And when you see this, when I see this, the light come on in someone's eyes, it's a miracle, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's powerful. And those are the kinds of moments that we get to see, fortunately, more often than not, working in behavioral health.
Yeah.
Right. So Elisa is one of my very favorite people that I've met in this industry. And you're so knowledgeable. Okay. You have been in the business development part of it for how many years?
So I have 14 years sober. I was a school teacher, and I taught for a few years sober. So I've been in it a little over 11 years.
That's amazing.
So over a decade, right? It's called a decade.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to ask you, how did you first get involved in behavioral health, and what drew you to this work?
So I'll be completely transparent, because I really have done some work around the fact that I have shame in some of my story. I put my teaching certificate in danger when I was in active addiction. So I had was asked to take an ethics course because I had a DUI as a Palm Beach County school teacher. I tried to outsmart the Palm Beach County school system, and they caught me. So they took my school away because I had lost my teaching certificate for, I don't know, it was like a 6-day overlap when I did finally get that class taken care of. But by then I lost the school I was teaching at in Palm Beach Gardens. It was called Dwyer High School. So I would have to start fresh in the system. And I just wasn't prepared to do that. So I remember not having enough gas money to get to this addiction conference that one of my friends that owned like an addiction magazine was like, you want to work the booth? So I literally had to borrow gas money from my father. I went down to this addiction conference and I was looking around like, what is happening here? And it was so intriguing to me. And I got a job offer that day to be an alumni director for a small mental health facility in Delray Beach, Florida. And that's when the trajectory of my life changed.
So this came about in a really organic way that you just, there's no way you could have predicted any of that.
No, I was just praying that God opened another door for me because I'm like, all right, now I can't be a teacher. This is my identity. This is who I am. And I remember going to meetings and crying about it for weeks. And somebody said to me like, hey, just do the footwork. Just keep waiting for God to reveal what your next step is. And that's what happened. Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because if your life before that point had unfolded in even just a slightly different way, like that chain of events would have never happened.
No, the slender threads that they talk about in some of the rooms, like inches and millimeters, like this had to happen for that to happen and this to happen. And if I was in the way, which I do get in the way, my own life at times, none of it would happen. And I'm grateful because I went from the alumni director to business development for Acadia. And I worked for Acadia for 4 times. And then, continuing on to some great companies, great corporations, great experiences. And each job I had made me better and more prepared for the next one.
That is incredible. Yeah. So working in behavioral health and especially on the business development side for over a decade.
Yes.
Right? Okay. I'm curious, what are some trends that you're seeing right now in LA? In terms of the treatment landscape, because I'm newer, to the industry professionally, right? So I've been around since 2023, and there's different people that I talk to, and they're like, "Oh, it's changed so much."
Sure.
And I'm a little bit curious about that from your perspective.
Yeah. So maybe they say that it's changed, but they don't really tell you how it's changed.
Yes.
So, and there's a lot of us will have side conversations and be like, "Oh, it's changed. Well, okay? So treatment's treatment, right?
Yes.
Like, and when I got into it 10 years ago, it was different in the fact that it wasn't quite as challenging. Now, there of course was people that were doing the same thing, trying to visit the same therapists, the same hospitals, the same other business development professionals, but there wasn't as many of us. The insurance hadn't caught on, I guess, that our business was so fraudulent. So people weren't quite as desperate. And I also think that the rest of the world also hadn't caught on that it was a situation that people could make a ton of money in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that makes sense. Like it in a lot of ways, the saturation point probably is just a lot higher now.
And it happened over time, right?
Yeah.
It happened over time. And what was not acceptable 11 years ago is acceptable now.
Yeah.
And that's really the best way I can put it. I remember working for a facility in Florida. They took TRICARE. So I was a big military people situation. And I remember I branded myself as a person that took TRICARE. So everybody would be like, oh, Lisa's the TRICARE person.
Right.
So I got calls for TRICARE. That is not a situation now. You've got 500 facilities that take TRICARE now. So you're not, it's there's no expert in anything anymore.
The niche.
There's really
it's just not, everybody does it.
Yeah. And the fact is that everybody's competing and competing and competing. And it feels like, and I never worked in pharma, so I don't know, but it feels like it was not cutthroat. It was collaborative, and it's still collaborative. A lot of us work with each other.
Right.
But it just feels when people are like, it's different. I think that's what they're talking about, because at one point I could put 17 people in treatment a month. Now, literally, it's hard for us to even put 5 in.
And so, and as someone who my clients are cash pay because what I do with the, and on the holistic concierge side, right, is I couldn't bill it to insurance even if I wanted to, unfortunately. I wish, right? But what I've heard is we had the Affordable Care Act, right, which made it a lot easier for people at that time to get more treatment. And then there's been some changes in backlash since then, where now it's a lot more difficult for people even to get 30 days through their insurance, right?
Very challenging, which is really sad, because and I'm just one bozo on the bus. I feel everybody deserves treatment, but not everybody can afford it now. And then some of the state-run facilities, or some of the ones that are Medi-Cal, or in Florida where I used to live, Medicaid, just not as available. I remember there was a place in Delray Beach where, people would be like, hey, I have no money, I need to go to treatment. You would have to go there for 5 days straight to wait for a bed. Now, it was not a bad place.
Right.
But the availability for beds were not there.
Wow. So also too, just more treatment options, right?
Yeah, and that's good and bad, right? So it's like, be careful what you wish for. These are the best of times, these are the worst of times. But so you have more treatment options, but are the right people in this business? That's a good question. And I'm not going to be incorrect about how I say this, because I certainly don't want anybody calling and saying, oh, you got on the podcast and you were slamming all the No, but the thing is that if you're getting in the business right now, you have no knowledge of the business, you're only in it for the money. Are you doing this for the right reasons? Like some, not all, but some people are doing this not to actually be in the helping field.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, so before working in this field, my family's background is commercial real estate development, and so when I started doing this work, my dad, his perspective is always coming from the business side, right?
Yeah.
And so he was telling me about all the private equity that's been pumped into treatment, and there's good and bad to that, right?
Certainly.
There's definitely programs where they seem to have done a good job not getting in the way of the clinical level of care, and that's the best case scenario. And then there's programs where they are trying very visibly to just extract as much value as they can and kind of sell it for parts, I mean, that's kind of blunt, but you see both.
Right. And it's okay to make money, right, in this field. We need to keep the lights on.
Right.
But when you're coming in, or when private equity comes in, and I've worked for companies that have been bought up by private equity, and then all of a sudden you see 6 or 7 business development people laid off, tons of therapists let go. And all of a sudden the clinical care isn't what it used to be. They're not spending the money on the marketing, and you see them going to the call centers to get their patients in. I don't know. Is that the best idea?
Okay. So Elisa, obviously, you've been working closely with families for over 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? Because as someone who is in business development, you're like the bridge between families who are seeking treatment and this actually happening.
Sure.
Right? Okay. So I'm wondering, what's something that families might often misunderstand about treatment or recovery?
Okay, so that's a great question. So many ways to answer that. I want to say that probably one of the better things I did was get intervention trained. I got intervention trained by Brad Lamb when I moved up to California.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yes.
Oh, that's incredible. He's held in very high regard.
Yes, and that was one of the most valuable trainings, especially, and I don't do any interventions on my own. I've seconded on a couple. One, with my friend Lee Fitzgerald.
Chair. Yeah.
And Brad's asked me to second on a couple. I never did it, but it helped me to be able to navigate with families.
And I would guess that that's probably not typical for a lot of people in business development to have done that.
It should be.
It absolutely should be, but I'm so impressed by that. Yeah, because now then when you're interacting with families, you're coming with a whole other set of tools.
Sure. Because I felt like I was possibly not qualified to be diving really deep in with families.
Yep.
Because there's so much trauma around the fact that they have a family member that is addicted and possibly dying.
Yeah, this is serious. I mean, you're interacting with families when they're in crisis, and this is very, very vulnerable time.
Yes.
Yeah. And the window of opportunity is only open for a short time.
It is really with SUD or substance, shall we say.
Yes.
With mental health, it's not as small, but the window's quick, and having the families usually be on board. And, so there's some different theories around where the families are, like clinicians or people like me think of the family. So I don't have to offer an opinion about it. I just look at it like I'm here to help, right?
Absolutely.
I'm just 100% here to help them navigate. I think the biggest thing is that the families are just not educated about what to do.
It's very overwhelming.
Yes.
You have a loved one in crisis, your son, your daughter, your mom, your dad, whatever the case may be. And unless you've had to navigate that road yourself, or you happen to work in behavioral health, which probably you don't for the average family.
Or even know somebody in behavioral health, which a lot of them don't.
No.
So they Google a place, and there's chances that they're going to get a really bad treatment center and send their loved one to a bad place. And it happens more often than not.
And that's the thing that I think can be so tricky about this, which we kind of alluded to earlier, is like, it's great having a lot of options. And then it's also maybe not so great having a lot of options.
Right.
It's, kind of double-edged sword, right? Because if you have not done your homework, and it can be really misleading. I mean, you can be very astute, very educated person, and the website looks one way, and then you actually get in there and it can be a totally different experience.
Right. How many people go, well, I was coming to California and I thought I was going to be on the beach. And then they'll be like, this is no beach, right?
Well, yeah, because they could be inland somewhere. I mean, California is a big state. Everyone thinks California is, the Santa Monica beach you see in the movies. And that's one very small part of the whole, state. I mean, especially if people end up in Northern California where there's not very much treatment compared to Southern California.
Right.
That's totally different than what they expected.
No mental health really up there.
No, very, very little.
I mean, good treatment centers, but it's just a different area.
No, that's where I'm from, and I got sober there, and I didn't go to treatment because that wasn't even on my radar as a possibility. I just thought that that was reserved for hardcore drug addicts, which I had my own struggles and journeys with that. But at that point, I was basically down to alcohol and marijuana. And so I just thought, well, I kind of have to just kind of tough it out. And I didn't know any better,
Right.
So many people come from all over the country to Southern California to seek treatment.
Yeah.
Right. And so that makes sense. If families are not, if they don't have like an insider, basically, it can be very, very overwhelming because you could look up treatment and it's like a million places pop up. You don't know what you're getting.
Which is why I like to be somebody to actually help them with that. And even my friend Lee, and just an example, because I really respect the work she does.
Lee Fitzgerald.
Yeah. And she's a great interventionist, among other things. She has other business. But one thing is she is not necessarily going to do an intervention on the family, but she will help educate them. Yeah.
And that's like the goal, I think, from my perspective. I haven't completed my internship yet, but I've started the training for Arise.
Right.
To be a certified Arise interventionist. And
So
kind of
good.
like you, I don't know whether or not I'll actually ever formally perform interventions.
Yeah.
But that's a skill set that I want to have in my back pocket because you just don't know when it can be useful, and that could be the difference between someone feeling comfortable to take that step forward that could change the whole course of their life, for the better or not, right? Because you kind of have to strike while the iron's hot.
It's like being armed with the facts, right?
Yes.
I love to be able to be a resource for families. And I can also be a resource for some of the providers too. Yeah.
Okay, so what are some signs that families should pay attention to before a situation becomes a crisis?
Well, I think people withdrawing, isolating, not doing the things they used to love.
Yeah,
not
those are kind of
communicating.
telltale signs.
Yeah. I think I'll talk about myself. For
Mhm.
me, I was in active addiction for years before I was willing, and my family really didn't. I mean, they were like, "Oh, you're not really an alcoholic." So I think
Mm.
there's a denial piece
Mm.
too.
It was like that for me too. And I think it's very common for people in general, but also particularly for a lot of women.
Okay.
I think that
Yeah.
if you can kind of present in a way where things look kind of okay on the surface, you still got
Yeah.
a job,
Yeah.
right? You're not homeless.
And it did look okay on the outside. I made sure it looked okay on the outside.
Yes.
I mean, I
exactly
remember
that.
when I went to treatment, I went to this party in Palm Beach and I was posing for pictures on Facebook and looking just fabulous.
Right. Yeah. You look like you're living your best life.
I really did, but I still do that. So I still pretend.
Your story is reminding me, there was a close friend of mine that I got sober with back in Northern California, and I had about 5 years sober. I've 12 years sober right now.
Amazing.
And she became convinced that maybe she really wasn't an alcoholic. Maybe she didn't have a problem with addiction. She had dated someone who had a very, very progressed drug addiction. And her story was mostly alcohol and like a couple prescription medications. So she was focused on all of the differences
Yeah.
instead of the similarities.
Sure.
And looking at him, it was really easy for her to say, well, if this is what addiction is, I don't have this, right?
Yeah.
So she moved out of the area, and I got one phone call from her, and she told me, I don't think that I'm an addict. And I said, well, that's fine. That doesn't have, I don't have anything to say about that. It's so personal. People have to self-diagnose.
Sure.
I'm never going to tell someone, oh, I think you have a problem,
Right.
especially if this isn't like a client that I'm serving professionally. Definitely not going to do that. And anyways, long story short, her social media looked like she was like, it looked like a magazine. It was perfectly curated. Everything looks great. And then I got a phone call from a number that I didn't have in my phone. I let it go to voicemail. This woman sounds very frantic. I didn't recognize her voice either. I called back just to be of service because I'm thinking, okay, this is obviously someone maybe that I met, in recovery who's reaching back out. And long story short, she could not stop drinking.
Yeah.
And she called me to tell me that. She was like, I literally can't stop. I can't stop. And I don't know what to do. And I said, have you considered going to treatment? Because if you are at that point where you can't stop, you can't stop.
Right.
You're going to need medical supervision.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether she went or not. But the appearance that we put out to the world can be very misleading.
Totally.
And it's misleading for family members.
Yeah.
Right? Because your family, your own family who loves and cares about you, and most of the time, these are the people that are behind the push to help someone find recovery through treatment. You can mask it from your own family.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is. And I mean, I even think 5-6 years into being sober, my family was still not totally convinced. They're like, are you sure? And I'm like, if I put this drink in my system,
Yep.
I will be in jail. I may give it 5 days. It might be 5 months, but I'm going back to jail.
Yep.
Because once I do, I have no choice and no control in the amount I take. And I have a 30-year life to show me that.
Lots of proof.
I
don't
didn't
need
really
any
need
more
any
proof.
more proof. No, and I had not only like lost everything like on the outside, I also had lost my soul.
Yeah. Yeah, no big deal, right? No, and that's the thing. I can look at pictures of myself from the very end. Nobody's home. In my eyes, it's just totally vacant. I'm gone. You know? And I'm so grateful, to get to be a 100% participant in my own life.
Yeah.
Again. You don't take that for granted when you've lost that. And that's what happens to everyone. If this is something that you struggle with, it's only going to get worse.
I know. That's why I think people like us should be more traction rather than promotion. I mean, even though things aren't perfect. I mean, I lost my mom 7 months ago-ish. And I've been challenged with, sometimes showing up, right?
Yes.
But I'll tell you something. I wouldn't have been able to get through any of this without being a sober woman. Nothing, Jennique.
Forget it. No, forget it.
Hang it up. Nobody would have even seen me with this grief, because this grief has been so profound and hard. And she was sick for a couple of years before. So I was always in fight or flight. And I'll tell you, like, parts of my recovery was challenging. Well, not my recovery, but parts of my life was challenging. So I wasn't going to as many meetings. I wasn't sponsoring as many women because I was so grief stricken.
It's hard not to isolate when you are in that place.
But I didn't pick up a drink.
Which is a miracle.
And because of that, I'm okay today. And my closest relationship that I have, still standing here, is with God.
And that's what it's all about, right? For me too.
Yeah.
And whatever you choose to call God, I'm very, very down with G-O-D.
Right.
So I've got no problem with that.
Yeah. I mean, there's no monopoly, right? We can just call it whatever. Whatever we need to keep us going.
But it's true. And one of the gifts of working in treatment, right, is you have the evidence and experience from your own life, which is extremely powerful, especially with what you just shared. Okay. Losing someone close to you that you love, someone like that, which I have not been through and I'm not looking forward to it. Okay. And if we all live long enough, it's something that we're all going to go through. It's just part of life, you know? And working with clients and people in treatment, seeking treatment, and seeing the things that they get to walk through, finding recovery that they could have never walked through and stayed sober. Yeah. That just fills me up, you know?
Yes. I know what you do is really special.
Thank you.
I mean, I love the business side of it, but I don't have direct client care very often. So I really appreciate people that do have it, like you.
I love it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's very, very rewarding. Mm-hmm. It can be challenging, of course. I think anything that's worth doing can be challenging. Sure. And there are days that can be hard. But if you just stay the course, right, and it's the right fit, it's night and day. It could be night and day. You can see, in my case, because I only work with women and girls, the change from day 1 to day 30, day 60, sometimes irrecognizable.
I bet.
You would never even know that this is the same young lady or woman that you met that first day. It's pretty powerful.
I believe it.
Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so now that we're kind of talking about this anyways, in your opinion, right, what makes a referral relationship really work well between treatment centers and outside professionals?
So that's such an important relationship, and it's so coveted. I mean, I wouldn't be anywhere without some of the relationships. I think that so give me the question again.
Yeah.
What makes it?
So in your opinion,
mm-hmm.
What do you think makes a referral relationship work?
Okay.
Between treatment centers and outside professionals.
All right. So between treatment centers, treatment center professionals,
yes.
Between a person like me, between me, case managers, between me and business professionals, between me and therapists, it's all about trust and relationships. 100%.
Yep. Could not agree more.
Yeah.
This is serious stuff. These are people's lives that can potentially hang in the balance.
Yeah.
And if you don't know who you're working with, you can't be confident about working with anyone.
Right. And I mean, I use the word resource. So, I mean, I have people that have called me for 5 more than years that say, hey, Lisa, what do you think about this therapist? What do you think about this treatment center? I still have people call me. So once we can build relationships now, of course, it's gained more momentum and we're about sending people to treatment centers and there's quotas and there's numbers and there's metrics and there's blah and they're blah and they're blah. But realistically, if we're to be successful in the long term with longevity in this industry, field, business, or even the way it's become, if I don't have trust and I haven't built relationships, then I might as well get out of it tomorrow. And let me tell you, I've toyed with it because of the way it's changed. I'm just like, am I even useful in this area anymore? And I've prayed about it and I've prayed about it because I think one of the things that I have done, and I carry some shame around it, is I've moved companies. Like I said, I worked at Acadia 4 times. I worked at UHS, Universal Hospital Systems, 4 times. But people like me have moved around a little bit. There gets to be where we do not stay in the same situation for years and years and years on end. Some do. The majority doesn't.
And I think that's kind of, it could be said across a lot of different industries in 2026 compared to 10, 15 years ago. I think most people tend to move around every few years. I don't think it's that unusual.
I'm not justifying it, Jennique, but I'm just saying that, like I said, what was not acceptable before, bad, good, or indifferent, is acceptable now.
Within treatment in general.
Yeah, with healthcare.
Yes.
With treatment.
Yes.
With mental health.
Yes.
With the landscape totally changing. So I remember people would be like, oh my gosh, Lisa, how is this situation okay?
Mm-hmm.
With somebody having 3 jobs in 2 years. You can talk to people now that do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily the standard, but it's more common than it was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, whenever there's a change, there's a reason. Right. And I think kind of what you're,
because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And there's places that close. And then there's a company that will all of a sudden come in and get rid of all the marketing department and lay off the whole team.
And then this falls on you?
Well, it happens with private equity.
Yes.
If their marketing department or their business development team is not making the numbers, they will get rid of the director and all the reps. I can name 3 companies that's done that in California since I've been here, where they fire 5 or 6 people. And it's happened to me. So, and I know many people that it's happened to. So that's what I mean by it's changing. You're there one day, you're busting and moving, and then all of a sudden you get an email the next morning that says your position has been dissolved.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from this, and if I'm off, you can just correct me.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a direct connection between this shift from this huge, massive influx of private equity funding coming into the behavioral health space and what that experience has been like for the people that are boots on the ground that have been a part of these different, treatment centers and organizations before they got there.
Yes. And we can just tie it back to what you talked about with the referral partners.
Yes.
It's so important to keep in close contact, be consistent with your referral partners, make sure that you do meet their needs too. And if they want calls back, if they want to know what their patients are doing, because there's so many situations where if we aren't effective and communicative with them, then we lose the relationships, right?
Yep. And I think this is and what and I love this about our industry, this is and it should be, hopefully, a people first industry. The whole thing is about relationships and people.
Yes.
Right? Okay. And so if you can't or won't communicate, right, it's not the right place for you.
Right.
And this is oftentimes this is very collaborative work, and that's like what I like about, my little niche in the ecosystem is I'm building clinical teams, and so I don't want to be the only person working with the client. I'm one person.
Right.
I might be the quarterback, but I'm working with the team.
Sure.
And that's my preference is I want to work with and connect with the people that are the best in what they do, whether that's therapy, psychiatry, whatever it is, and work together, to help meet the needs of the client. But I have the luxury of being cash pay,
Yes.
which is a totally different environment.
It is.
And to be in a position where it's totally driven by insurance.
Yeah.
And then if you do, if there's a private equity takeover, I don't know what else you want to call it, right? That's kind of what it is. It's sort of 50-50 odds that everything gets disturbed or not. Best case scenario, and I've heard some positive stories where that change has happened and it still seems like the heart and soul of that organization hasn't been tampered with too much, but that's probably the exception. I don't know. How could it not be?
Right.
You go from mom and pop independent to corporate. It's, they didn't start a business from a heart-centered place. They're coming in as business people.
Sure.
It's a business opportunity. It's tough.
And we can always go back to that thought where it's like, yes, we got to keep the lights on, right?
Of course. It's great to have funding. We can stay in business and hopefully serve more people. I mean, there's
right.
benefits too.
Total benefits. I just remember like being at places where it's like, okay, so John Doe's insurance is cut off today. He's out the door. That's the saddest piece, like that people can and do suffer. Like if you're at a place that has a heart, like you're talking heart-centered, then John Doe's
make certain accommodations.
Yeah, his insurance is cut off, but you know what? We're going to let him stay another week.
Right.
It's just that doesn't always happen.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it just depends. So in your opinion, Elisa, how important is family involvement in recovery?
Wow. I mean, I'll tell you, I remember when I lived in Florida, there was only one program that really pulled the family, and I had a sponsee, and she was just like, no, they make my family call. They make me call my family from therapy. And I mean, and it's still a coveted program today, but I think it's crucial. Not every program does it, but the ones that do, what do I know? But the ones that do, I feel show the most success.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just the identified patient, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of times family needs the help too.
The whole family system has been affected by what's been going on. And usually whatever's been happening has not occurred in a vacuum.
Right. And we go back to the education piece too. I remember, and I'll just speak for myself. I remember my mom picked me up from treatment, my mom and dad, and they took me to Chili's. It was our favorite restaurant, and they literally ordered 2 for $1.
Yeah.
I was like, wait. They just don't know.
No.
So like I asked them to go to Al-Anon. They did, and it's okay. I still survived. But the point is being educated.
Yeah. Is very helpful.
And also be attending therapy with your family. Like sometimes the family is ill too.
Yeah. And there's no shame about any of this. It's just like we're all human having an extremely human experience.
Yeah.
And in my experience, I think to the degree that the family is willing or at least open to becoming willing to participate in their own level of work, which a great place to start is therapy, whether that's individual or family, group counseling. That's a nice kind of segue because it's not just, you're not in the hot seat
Right.
You're in a group. I love making that recommendation for families if they're open to it, because that can kind of help just get the conversation going and take some of the fear and stigma, if it exists, around, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me or wrong with us because now we're in therapy, which you'd hope in 2026 that there would be a lot less stigma around therapy. But you know what?
One would hope.
But depending on the family, I mean, a lot of times people have never done that type of work.
Right.
So yeah, I couldn't agree more. Okay. And I can't believe it, but we're coming down to our last two questions.
Look at us.
I
We're
know.
just flowing through this.
Okay. So I think you're going to have something good to say about this. What do you think the behavioral health field still needs to improve?
All right. Let me be thoughtful about this answer.
Yeah. Take your time.
So, I mean, there's always need for improvement, right, Jennique? There's
Mhm.
always need. Every industry needs to improve.
Always.
I just go back to conversations with people like Kurt Garby
Mhm.
and people like Lee and people like Patricia about what it was like when there was more heart in it, when there was more time that people really did put client care first. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because it does, but it needs to happen across the board. I feel like that could really improve everything.
Yeah. Right. Like, let's not forget what our primary purpose is in all of this. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it should never, ever be about the mighty dollar. It should never be about putting a head in a bed. Unfortunately, it sometimes is.
There's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Right. And then depending on who's in charge and how they operate and manage, your focus can start to become kind of skewed. I mean,
and people get in fear.
Yeah.
And they get desperate and they make poor decisions. And sometimes you can't come back from that.
No. And particularly in an industry like this, that's so relationship trust dependent, because if other people can't trust your judgment, right? And really, especially under fire, under pressure, it's going to be hard to recover from.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just going to be the way that it goes. Yeah. It totally makes sense. I love that message. Yeah. Client care. I mean, that's why we're here, right?
I mean, it's simple, stupid, right? Like, what can we improve on? Well, we put the patient first. Bingo.
But it's important to say that, because I agree with you. I think there's so much going on and there's so many moving pieces and there's so much pressure. It can get kind of lost in the sauce, unfortunately.
I think it does.
Right? Okay. So last question. What advice would you give families who are just starting to look for help?
I would say don't just rely on Googling a treatment center. I mean, granted, most people do, but I would also say do the homework like you were talking about. Make the phone calls. See if you can find somebody that actually is educated about what's going on with mental health, drug and alcohol treatment. Find somebody to talk to, because even sometimes, and I mean, this is controversial, even sometimes if you go online, you call a number, there are places that have hijacked the website and you get an admissions person and they'll be like, admissions, okay, is this so-and-so? Admissions, this is the admissions team, and you're not even getting the right center.
Yep.
So it's so tricky that just doing it like that and then being comfortable giving $20,000 to a center. I have like a story. A woman that owns a center told me that she had an address and somebody called her phone and said, hey, I, am sending my kid to you. And she knew nothing about who this person was. And
that's so scary.
You know what? It can get really, really scary. Now, the good news is if somebody does do their homework, they don't have to go through that because it can get really ugly. I remember seeing one time that Delray Beach, Florida, where I lived, was thought of as the recovery capital of the world.
Yep. A lot of treatment there.
And a lot of it's changed now. They've cleaned a lot of that up. But I was living through that. I lived there, right there. I saw all the body broking. I saw all of it. I was there and I worked there. But I remember the mayor of Delray Beach got on the news and he said, if you send your kid to treatment here, they're going to be coming home to you in a body bag.
Oh,
he literally said that.
Oh,
so that's what I would say.
Whew.
Don't just, you have to really, if you're a family, if you be a family, don't just rely on a quick little Google search.
No, I have to, if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a family member that's looking for help for a loved one, if I knew nothing, and if you have a different idea based on what I'm saying, please just chime in. But if I knew nothing and I was starting from scratch, like where is the best place to send, my son or daughter, for example, my suggestion to you would be, maybe a good place to start would be like doing a search for some interventionists instead of a treatment facility.
Actual
providers. You can do research on that person to see if they are legitimate or not.
Right.
There should be information about them. You can see if they belong to a board. That's a great thing to look for. Like I'm a part of the Association of Interventionists. Like usually that's going to be very visible on their website.
Or SAMHSA.
Yes.
There are sites. There's sites that you can get on. There's also, if you do call a treatment center, say, I would like to be called back by one of your business development professionals that helps families navigate through treatment. Like I'm not just going to talk to somebody unnamed over the phone,
Yep. Also to another good place to start might be psychiatrists.
Right.
Whether or not you have a loved one who's already a part of, who sees a psychiatrist or not, you could do research on specific psychiatrists where you live.
That they can make the recommendations.
Exactly. And I think that's probably a lot better at this point right now. If you knew no one and nothing and you were starting from scratch, than to do a Google search, because it's very overwhelming and you really can't tell and get a fair gauge of what this treatment center really is, because the website can be very different than the actual experience. And I know for myself, when I'm referring to treatment centers, I only refer to places where I know the people that work there very well.
Or you've seen it.
And I've seen it and I know what the program is. And also ideally, in my case, I want to hopefully have the opportunity to interact with some alumni if I can, because then you really know.
You can even ask, can someone call me back that's been through the program?
That's a really great suggestion. That's an excellent suggestion. I love that. Yeah.
I've actually had alumni call families and talk to them.
Okay. See, that's beautiful.
Yep. I've done it.
Yeah. So definitely not a step to take lightly. Of course, being in crisis can make us do all kinds of crazy things for any of us, but definitely something that you want to pause on, take a deep breath. And
a good thing too to do, it's like a lot of times like the case management in hospitals or the social workers can make great recommendations for treatment centers around the area.
Yes, that is another really great resource. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. Oh my gosh, we're here. Okay. Elisa, thank you so much for being here today.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining me and sharing all of your insights.
You got
I
it.
really appreciate the work you're doing in the field and the perspective that you brought to this conversation.
I appreciate it.
And thank you to everyone listening to Clinical Conversations. For people listening who might want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Just probably reach out to me directly. So my number, should I give my direct number?
You can if you want to, whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, it's 561-255-8966. Again, that's 561-255-8966.
Fantastic. And we will also have all of Elisa's contact information in the description box as well. And if you would like to learn more about Phoenix Transformative and the work that we do supporting women and girls, you can find me on Instagram at Phoenix Transformative. You can also check out our website, phoenixtransformative.com. And of course, stay tuned for our YouTube channel where you're going to find all of the latest clinical conversation episodes.
Yeah.
Until
Latest and greatest.
Yes, exactly. And until next time, thank you.